in practice, we notice that the way you design your system influences on how easy it is to test it. The idea of designing a system in such a way that testing is easier is what we call design for testability. This is something that all software developers should aim for. In this video, we're going to discuss a few ideas on how to do this. But what you're going to see is that most of them rely on the idea that the domain model needs to be completely separated from the infrastructure. By domain model, I mean the core of your system, all the business rules and all the logic you have, and all the entities and objects and all relationships. And this domain model needs to be very far from the infrastructure it consumes from time to time. For example, your application probably needs a database, or your application probably uses a web service. If these two things are mixed, meaning the domain model code and the infrastructure code that talks to the database, testability gets harder and harder. So, okay, we need to separate these two things. Coburn coined the term ports and adapters architecture. The idea is that you have all your business logic inside your domain, and whenever your business logic needs some infrastructure, then you need to make your business logic to depend on what he calls ports. Ports are simply interfaces that represent what that infrastructure needs to do. For example, if you need to get invoices from a database, a port can be an interface that has a method that returns a list of invoices. These ports are completely agnostic from the implementation. In the picture, you see ports as part of the domain. They don't know nothing about a database. And then, of course, you have adapters. And these adapters do the concrete action and talk to the infrastructure. In the figure, you see that they are outside of the domain, so that we keep our domain completely ignorant about infrastructure. The ports and adapters architecture fits nicely with the idea of testability because we can easily mock the ports. Another very famous idea that has a relationship with this separation between domain model and infrastructure is what we call domain-driven design, the term coined by Eric Evans. And in the book, Evans shows that the domain is the most important part of the system, and he calls it the heart of the system. And the domain needs to be completely separated from the infrastructure. And besides all the advantages that Eric mentions in the book about maintainability and evolvability, another advantage we have is testability, because again, we don't depend on infrastructure, and infrastructure is very hard to control. So when we think about design for testability, the first idea I want you to have in mind is that if you have infrastructure, you need to separate it from your domain. And this idea seems very simple, but it's very hard to implement. I have seen some software developers working on mobile applications, working on very specific Java technologies, and they all suffered from having their business logic mixed with their frameworks and technologies that they were using. This really requires some thinking from the developers. And that's the difference between a developer that understands testability and a developer that doesn't understand it. So make sure that you can really separate these responsibilities, because in the future, testing will be way easier for you.